Hello, welcome to this video. This is coverage for the London Chess Classics, the third and final leg of the Grand Chess Tour. Yeah, this is the first round, and I'll be covering this event by going through all the games quickly, but focusing on maybe one or two key games of the round. It depends a little bit how the games go. If there are two or three super interesting games, okay, I'll be going into those a little bit in a little bit more detail. We will see what happens. Okay, in this round, I'll be kicking off with Caruana with white playing Aronian. Yeah, we got a Ruy Lopez, which was to be expected. Caruana is almost exclusively playing 1e4, and Aronian, yeah, is a permanent 1e5 player. So we probably could have guessed that opening beforehand. So what do we get? Aronian played 3a6 and probably angling for the marshal as he usually does, but Caruana went for one of those anti-marshal lines. We had some fairly standard development. The white bishop going to a2, now bishop to e6. Yeah, this is the same position that both players had in 2014 when Caruana decided to take and play b4. That happened in the Singfield Cup 2014 when Caruana won a nice game later. That was part of his 7-game winning streak. This time, however, he plays a different move. He plays d4. Quite logical, actually, striking in the center with black's knight being offside on a5. This is quickly changed by Aronian, getting the knight back and supporting the center here, the e5 pawn. Yeah, here I actually thought that white might be able to hold the center a little bit before releasing the tension. But yeah, I mean, white can go with slow moves like h3 or rook e1 or something like that. Just keep the center. But he decided to play d5, probably also because that rook on a2 is quite in a funny spot. So opening up the position, maybe not not in white's interest so much. Yeah, back to b8. And this is a good regrouping. Knight to d7 and the queen to b7. Yeah, what about this position? Equal, slightly better for white. Tough to say. I think probably black should be okay. Even though black is reduced to one particular idea for some kind of play. That would be the move c6. Yeah, you have two pawn levers here, c6 and f5. f5 seems entirely unrealistic to play, and therefore c6 is the move that black will go for, even though, and we'll see that later, this weakens a little bit. We've got an interesting moment here. Knight h2. The idea that white often has is to play knight to g4. This especially applies to a position like that. Let's say something like that, where this move can be interesting to trade knights. The knight on f6 is defending the d5 square, so trading the f3 knight, which does not relate to the d5 square at all, can be useful. Interesting idea, knight h2 here, but it's a well-known idea, anticipating the c6 move. Yeah, Aronian went h5, just covering this square. A difficult move to play, I think, h5. I would be reluctant to play it. That much I can I can tell. But it does make quite a bit of sense, of course. Yeah, back to f3, now that this idea was nullified. Bishop g5. This is also in anticipation of the c6 break. We will see why. Because now white is able to capture that knight which defended the d5 square. So it looks like white gets this scenario of a favorable knight against a bad bishop, the bishop that is just protecting that pawn. Looks like a dummy piece on e7, but it is not that bad because the knight on f3, well, it is on f3 and not on d5. This is the main thing here. If white like magically could transfer the knight to the d5 square, he definitely would be yeah, in a good situation, having some advantage. But it's not so easy to get there. Yeah, it's 4 moves, and it's difficult to do, probably impossible. And this means that black is, it seems to be perfectly okay. We'll see how it goes. There's the counterplay, a5 and b4. Yeah, and I don't really see something better than what Caruana did. He traded and played c4. Otherwise, if he takes, he's settled with a somewhat saddled, I think it's the right word, with a weak b pawn. So he went c4. And again, that doesn't look good, but the thing is, black is easily trading things, and now is even ready for that typical regrouping of the bishop. And now we see that it is in no way inferior to the knight. Here we go. Yeah, now the bishop is doing a good job in defending. Yeah, I mean, white shouldn't do this. And after that trade happened, absolutely nothing is going on. We had a couple of more moves, and here the position is so blocked that really absolutely all players in the world now would draw with either color, because you cannot even make a mistake anymore. So a very clean draw. It felt like around here that maybe white can do something with a relatively good knight against the bishop, but it felt like ultimately the knight does not come to, I'm sorry for that, the knight here does not come to d5. Well, I cannot paint here. And this means that black is going to equalize. Okay, let's go to the next game. MVL with white against the world champion Magnus Carlsen. What do we get? A Sicilian. Okay. Well, Carlsen is mostly in one e5 player, but he mixed it up a little bit with the Sicilian now and then. And the line he goes for is the Sveshnikov. It's something that he has played before. Most notably, if we look at the very, very top level games, he played it in the second leg of the Grandchester against Giri. We get the main line. There's really not much to do up to this point. It's pretty much forced once the Sveshnikov is on the board. And here MVL goes for the bishop f6 line, or let's say knight d5 bishop f6 line. The other principal choice is to take and go knight d5 here, which is a little bit sharper, yeah, damaging the pawn structure, but giving black dynamic ideas. So this is the more, let's say, strategic move. Castles now by Carlsen. He played knight e7 against Giri, but Castles is the main move in this position, or bishop g5. Those moves I have played myself. In fact, it's been a while, but I played the Sveshnikov quite a bit. Okay, Castles, knight c2, rook b8. All this is very, very common. The next move, however, by Maxim Vachier-Lagrave is a bit surprising. He played the a4 move here right away, and after a long think, we can see here, yeah, the clock, he took like more than 15 minutes, or what is that? Yeah, 16 minutes for the move, which is pretty amazing, considering that we are talking about an absolute main line of a very popular opening. So maybe he confused his preparation, or forgot something. He should play a move quickly there. I mean, the thing is, a4 is not even that great. The normal moves here are either developing, something like bishop e2, let's say, or there is this funny idea h4. h4 looks like a strange idea. What is the point of that flank pawn move? There are a couple of ideas. In some, but rare cases, It's even the starting point of some kind of attack, yeah, with like g4, g5. But this is a rare case. The more common idea is to cover g5, so that there is no bishop g5. Why is bishop g5 a move? Because white often puts his knight, we should probably unpaint this, white often puts his knight to e3, supporting his friend on d5, and then black quite often is not unhappy to play bishop g5 and trade off that knight to lessen white's control of the d5 square. This is prevented by h4. And the second idea is that g3 and bishop h3 can be an interesting concept, trading off or trying to trade the light squared bishops, which in turn would help us help white to be more secure on the d5 square, so that the knight cannot easily be challenged by bishop e6 if that bishop is traded. Yeah, all those moves are more critical, especially h4, but a4 was played by Maxime, and the issue is black is just taking this. Yeah, he's not waiting till white captures on b5, but of course he takes and makes use of the open b file. Knight b4 now. Takes. Yeah, if white takes with the knight, bishop b7 is already a bit inconvenient. Note that white has not castled yet. Black is better developed, and this can easily be a problem. Now this is hanging, and if white covers something like a5, knight c2, d5, sees white on the ropes already. It's we are pawn down even, but the pure the strategic factors alone are bad enough. So white has to take with a pawn. There is no big choice there. And now bishop b7. Yeah, just looking at that knight on d5 and trying to just take it. Rook takes a4. And now queen c8 was played. It's an interesting moment here. Black also could have taken on d5, and maybe that was a somewhat more interesting choice. This is at least given by the engine. Something like ed5, e4 is interesting. Yeah, activating the bishop. And if the queen takes, black can do something like queen d7, winning. Oops, that was the wrong arrow. attacking that rook. And something like rook a6, rook b4 is definitely not bad for black at all. Even though something like bishop c4 shouldn't trouble white too much. I mean, if we look at this like here, and maybe rook d6 and then castles, that should still end in a draw. Yeah, this was played by Carlsen. And now, yeah, MVL took on f6. Yeah, damaging the pawn structure.
Check.
Takes. Bishop d3. And now white's counterplay idea is to, go for the king. Rook a6. Bishop c6 and rook takes b4. Yeah, and now here, the thing is, I mean, black has play here against e4 and b2, but black's king is also in a tough spot. The conclusion of the game here with rook d4 is pretty much forced now. Queen f3, f6 is hanging, and I mean, black doesn't really want to cover that, as queen g3,
check,
king h8, and something like rook c1 is more than awkward. Carlsen decided to take here, and this ends the game basically to a draw. I think maybe, I mean, he didn't have a great alternative, but also we should keep in mind that in the first two events of the Grand Chess Tour, Carlsen lost his first game. The first game in Norway he lost on time in the winning position where he forgot the time control. Was kind of crazy. And the other game he lost to Topalov. Both games he lost against Topalov. He lost against Topalov with white when some well-known novelty was sprung on him, and he lost a pretty bad game. So maybe he was not too dissatisfied with the draw anyway. So we got this situation now. Mate threat on h7. So black has to take on e4. Yeah, and now white, of course, is not settling for this. Yeah, where you have to fight a pawn down. But go here, check, check, check. And it's a perpetual. Again, a very correct draw, I think. And a little bit, yeah, the consequence of, yeah, MVL playing, yeah, a non-critical line here on move 13. Even though I think that Carlsen probably, yeah, maybe should have tried to take on d5 here instead of queen c8. But ultimately, we shouldn't forget, if you take here, we also get opposite colored bishops, which it's not like this is a draw or so because of the opposite colored bishops, but the pure nature of the position, even if black, let's say, get those pawns, yeah, for the a6 pawn, if white puts the bishop on d5, yeah, you can be a pawn down, yeah, it doesn't matter at all. The pawn on d6 is completely unimportant. So it's difficult for black to get anywhere here. Okay, so let's look at the next game. And Anand with white against Mickey Adams, the local player. Adams is not a regular a member of this Grand Chess Tour band of players, but he's the local guy from London. Of course, he's very strong and it could play in terms of his abilities, but he has no games in the first two legs and is not competing for the overall standings. So we'll see what happens. Anand went c4. That is not happening that often in Vicious games. He's mostly an e4 player, even though he had his moments, of course, of d4. Yeah? He played d4 famously against Kramnik in his best match of his life in 2008, and he also played d4 in the odd crucial game against Carlsen. c4, however, is not seen that often in Anand's games, but he has played it against Adams only this year in Shamkir in the Agashimov Memorial, where Anand won a very nice game with the English opening. This was also played in Shamkir, but Adams went for some c6 based setup in that event. Yeah, something like this happened. Somewhat. Yeah, I think we had this position or something very, very similar. And Anand won a nice game with white. This time, Mickey just goes for d5. This is the main line, and it's basically a reversed dragon. If we check this position, it is just like the dragon variation, but with reversed colors. What is the big difference? The big difference is that in the regular dragon variation, very often white, in this case it would be black, yeah, as it is colored reversed, castles long for very sharp play where the king is sitting on c8 and h5, h4, something like that would happen with colors reversed. But it's not doable here with black being a tempo down. Why isn't this working? Black being a tempo down compared to the colors reversed situation. Here, black has to be content with that classical setup with bishop to e7 and castles. One reason is, by the way, if you want to really explain that in some detail, is that for that long castling setup to work, black in the first place would need to avoid that knight move, so he would need to play this move. But the issue is, if we really trying to go there, yeah, like f6, then queen d7, then castles, here white has to move 1 d4. And this is a much, much better thing than black can ever hope for in the regular dragon variation, as there is an early d6 plays in the first place. Here's like d4 in one move, and white is also white, yeah, having an extra tempo. So fantastic situation for white. Black has to settle for that strategically focused setup with bishop e7 and short castles. Yeah, Anand goes for this setup, d3, bishop e3, rook c1. This is basically forgotten line if you compare it to what was en vogue in the last couple of years, or if you, yeah, I mean, you can even extend it to like let's say the last 2 decades, where everybody basically went for a3 and b4 setups. That rook c1 bishop e3 was popular back in the 1960s, and even back then it didn't have a reputation of being very dangerous. I think this has been seen a little bit more often in recent times, but this game is no great advertisement for white setup, to be honest. Black puts the knight on d4, which is the usual way of playing. Yeah? You develop your pieces, rook e8, bishop f8, and then a knight up to d4. And this is the general problem with many dragon type of setups. Whenever a knight pops up on that square, you're either forced to tolerate that piece, to take it, or to kick it away. If you kick it away with e3, which is of course impossible right here as this bishop there, but if you play e3 against that knight, you would weaken your pawn on d3. Often tricky decision, not easy to play, getting that pawn weak. Or you have to take. Let's say for example, white would take here. Yeah, takes, and now we see that this rook all of a sudden is of a nice half-open file, and that pawn on e2 could prove vulnerable. So also not a decision that is so easy to make. So you can take and give him the half-open file. You can play e3. So what are you going to do? You're going to tolerate the knight? Yeah, in this particular game, Anand ignored the knight for the time being. But now Adams could have maintained it a little bit, but he decided to relatively quickly trade it off in order to get a new knight to d5 and put up a position like that. We see that black is very nicely centralized and the knight on a4 is not doing that much. Yeah, black setup is very harmonious and it's unclear what white is doing there. I mean, where are you attacking? There is no weak pawn or a clear weakness that you can focus your pieces on. Yeah, in the game we had some trades coming. Yeah, black is, I think, well advised to simply take this. The knight is potentially the more dangerous piece here, as the position is relatively closed. I mean, we're not talking about a closed position, but the knight is certainly able to maybe maneuver to good squares. If you imagine, for example, something like knight e4 and g4 could establish the knight on the e4 square if white is given time. So what Adams did is a simple solution. He just took the knight and put the pawn on c5. I'm sorry for that. All right, that was the mailman. What can you do? Okay, so black played c5, putting up a position that is kind of comparable to a Maroczy bind, yeah, with those two pawns. And now it's very difficult for white to do anything. Yeah, e3, d4, tough to play. b4, also tough to play. So we have a position here that is, very, very balanced, let's say. White is having a little bit of a space disadvantage, but black is not able to do much there. They repeat it right here. I think again a very correct game and a solid draw here for Adams with black. To be perfectly honest, this line, if we go back here, this solid line is one of the reasons why I myself don't play 1c4 more often. I sometimes play that move, but this is very difficult to do anything with white against here with this kind of reversed dragon. Black's position is extremely sound and solid, and white has very little that he can do to make some kind of substantial pressure, like with some kind of somewhat forced line where you can get a little something. It's just not there. I mean, the position is very solid for black. So can be very much recommended for black players, this kind of setup, even if you are not a 1e5 player. Yeah, I mean, one e4 player. Yeah, you could say that, well, what black is doing is basically playing an e4 opening with colors reversed. Is that a good idea if I never play one e4 as white? Yeah, I think it is. It is a very specific kind of position that you can learn. It's not like you all of a sudden have to change your whole personality to play this kind of position. Okay, so that was the third draw, and now we come to two games that were a bit more interesting, let's say. Let's go for, what is the game? Shouldn't misclick here. Grishuk with white against Nakamura. So, what do we get? Yeah, Berlin. Yeah, the days of Nakamura playing unsound openings definitely over. He's having a very, very solid sound repertoire nowadays. I mean, he plays the odd King's Indian or Dutch defense or so, but he also plays Berlin and Queen's Gambit declined, Laske and this kind of thing. And it's the way to go if you want to become the world champion. And this is definitely what he wants to do. So we got the Berlin defense, and Grishuk allows the endgame. He both plays d3 and the endgame variation, but he's one of the guys who is more often than not going for this endgame. Check. Which is still probably the more principal choice than playing one of the slowish lines. Okay, I'm not going to make a big theoretical survey here on the Berlin wall endgame, simply because I'm not qualified. I can only do a couple of things here, or remark a couple of things. Grishuk played the move King H2, which is a new move, hasn't been played before. And in the press conference, I saw a little bit of the coverage yesterday. He said that Nakamura now found the best reply, but it is something that is not so easy to do over the board. Yeah, Nakamura is here. You see, yeah, he had blitzed up to here, but he took like really 40 minutes and then went c5. This is a tough move to play because it is such a committal choice. Yeah, you play c5, force the knight basically to b5, and then play king d8 again. Remember that black had taken on d8, back to e8, now back to d8. What is the point behind all those all those king moves? It's very concrete. The knight now is on b5, and if black gets in an attack on that knight, the white knight has to drop back to a3, which is an absolutely terrible square. And in comparison, if we look here, in comparison, that time loss by the black king is far less important. The knight on a3 is just completely misplaced, and it doesn't have something great to go to. Okay, it can go to c4, but that is not really helping that much. No? White has lost lots of time with his knight, and in comparison, I think black is quite happy with this king move again. Okay, knight e4 and h5. Bishop c6. That bishop has activated. We should never forget that black has the bishop pair. And if white is not getting anywhere with his majority, black will often be just better. And this is what happened in the game. A very nice moment is here after f4. Nakamura just played the move f5. It's also not such a completely easy decision to make, giving white a protected pass pawn. Yeah, that e5 pawn. However, that pawn is not going to be promoting anytime soon. And on the other hand, what black is getting is the potential of getting a knight to f5 if the g and f pawn are traded. Note that the capture is no good idea. Something like this, for example, leaves white in some substantial trouble. Yeah, knight f5 is already a threat. And the white king is not good at all. Again, note how bad this knight is on a3. So this was a better move by Grishuk. But after knight e6, Nakamura found a good move. F takes g4. That's very nice. Knight e6 was a mistake, I guess. because after
check,
this now, white is in some trouble. Knight f5 check is a huge threat.
check,
e6 was played. If white takes the rook in the corner, knight
check,
f5 check is going to win immediately. Yeah, the first line that we have to check is
check, checkmate,
this. So white has to go back, but now there's a check coming here, and something like that, white will absolutely not survive. Here we've got an attack on both rooks, and yeah, what is white supposed to play? Yeah, something like rook d8, for example. Black is going here, and here we see the big threat. Bishop e7 is yeah, winning everything. Yeah, the rook, and probably with a checkmate to come. Yeah, note how badly placed these knights are. It's really pretty remarkable. So white cannot take the rook. He inserted this check, king g8, and still, of course, you cannot take it. It's the same line. Or here it's a little bit more complicated. If we want to check this,
check, check.
Yeah, that's nice. But what are you going to do now? Just here. Impossible to prevent. White cannot take the rook. What did he do? He took that pawn on g4. Rook a7, saving the rook for the moment. And now rook d7. Funny move by Grishuk, but you had to. I mean, the knight is trapped. White's position is really in some danger of falling apart just now. Rook d7, however, is putting up a good fight. Nakamura now played knight f5. We of course have to check what happens if he takes the rook. If you take the rook, pawn takes, white is of course threatening to promote. So knight here, and now it's an interesting moment. Here white has knight e8 or knight d5. Yeah, something like knight e8 is threatening knight f6 in some cases, and also, yeah, I mean it threatens knight f6 if white takes on d7. This is the way I should phrase it, and it prepares rook d1. So let's say b5, rook d1, and white is still very much in the game. Bishop e7, and now white even has weird looking moves like b4. Yeah, trying to exploit this pinning situation. White is definitely somehow fighting. So Nakamura played knight f5. That's also the strongest move. The knight is approaching the king and of course threatening big. Bishop f2 now.
Check. Check.
Yeah, we're repeating when being low on time is a good idea. And now bishop e7. Bringing that into the game and cutting away important squares. Rook d1, that's the relatively best defense. It shouldn't save, but it's still the best try.
Check.
Again, we have
check.
A repetition. And here's the moment where probably Nakamura could have won the game with the move rook h5. It's a nice little preparation move that threatens knight h6 check, king g3, bishop h4, winning the house. And it seems that ultimately white is not able to defend against that. For example, if white takes on e7, this is something that is almost mandatory. Then rook d8 check, king h7. Again, white can try this funny move. We have sacrificed the two exchange here. This is a funny line. All of a sudden introducing this idea, but black has rook d5 and this will win. Yeah, a nice little thing is that after knight c4, black should play the move rook b7 and not just take on d7. Yeah, again, this is this here. Don't fall into that. Just go here and see what white is coming up now. Black will win. This is a very good opportunity here, rook h5. But Nakamura couldn't... yeah, I know, he probably didn't like a particular line or was irritated about something.
Check.
And he decided to... Oops, I'm sorry. To play the check again and now go rook h7. And here, after knight c4, this activation of the knight, yeah, seems to save the day for white. If black now tries something, I like taking, things are not clear at all, because there are a number of options now for white. Yeah, some knight d5, for example, some knight e5. White's position all of a sudden is very active. So taking the exchange was no option. Ultimately, with no time on the clock, they played 2 hours 40 moves without any increment. Nakamura decided to go for the repetition here. It's not the most inspiring thing to do, but I mean, you have no time on the clock, what are you doing? So taking the draw is probably the wise decision. Of course, a spoiled chance for Nakamura for an early win in this event, but it was a very tricky, difficult game, and showing that there are some interesting games in the Berlin Wall endgame. It's not always a dull draw, quite often, however. Okay, so we've got one game left to check, and this is Topalov with white against Giri. So let's go for that. So what do we have in this game? Giri seems to go for a Grunfeld defense. He's not King's Indian player, at least not on that level. Usually going for the Grunfeld if he goes for a g6 based setup in the first place. And Topalov goes for g3. He's got an interesting idea in mind. Giri plays the c6 d5 line. This is the most solid way to play against the fianchetto variation of the Grunfeld, and now Topalov goes for a trendy line, queen to a4. Somewhat strange at first looking move. Why move out? Why to move out the queen early? The idea is that if black is playing routinely, like bishop g7, then after c takes, knight takes, white has at least avoided a scenario where the c pawn recaptures on d5. A scenario that is often pretty dull, to be honest. Yeah, with the open c file, a little bit comparable to the Slav exchange, which is also not the most exciting opening ever. So queen a4 is a very concrete idea, the idea of capturing on d5. So what did Giri do? He played knight f to d7. Looks strange, but it is quite a good idea. Idea is to threaten knight to b6 and to provoke or to go for this kind of position. Yeah, so the white queen is going to a4 and back, and in the meantime black has rerouted his knight from f6 to b6. It's not so badly placed on b6, so I don't really believe that white's setup is that terribly dangerous. So we had a couple of normal looking moves. Rook e8, b3, and now e5. This is an important idea that is useful to remember. Here the isolated pawn is no problem at all. Black's activity is very, very substantial, and quite often he's got ideas like bishop f5 and putting a piece on d3. Note that white is not able to take on d5, as something like this, and later here will pick up material. The bishop is on that rook. White cannot take the pawn. He should be content with developing pieces, and this is what Topalov did. He first took control over g4, bishop f5, knight d4, bishop d3, And here knight d3 is an idea. Yeah, Topalov now went for this move. It looks kind of weird, but it's a bit difficult to suggest something else. You have to look at this knight d3, rook e2, knight c1 threat to see the reason. And normal moves like bishop b2, I mean, they just don't cut it. It doesn't look right, like here and here. But it's not a problem at all. Queen d2 is a decent move. We want to ultimately fianchetto. Knight d3, and now bishop d4. Interesting decision, just hacking this piece. But black gets very active play now. Queen to f6 and taking on d4. Yeah, how to evaluate this position? The computer is pretty positive that this is equal, but it is all about one particular situation. Knight d7, rook a4, queen e5, knight d5, and here Giri took on c1, and while this position is rather complicated, yeah, and I'm a little bit in a time hurry here, so I don't want to look at all possible lines, but it seems that here Giri could have equalized with knight 7 to c5, leading to very complicated stuff. Yeah, for example, rook h4 is an interesting try, which sometimes is the prelude to something like queen to h6. Yeah, takes, for example, queen takes, bishop e2. Very, very complicated lines. Queen c5, bishop d1, a6. Yeah, it's a big mess, but it seems that black ultimately is okay with that kind of position. The issue was that he took on c1, and here it's a little bit difficult now to fend off the ideas, especially knight c7. He went here, and here Topalov could have played stronger than he did. He played the move knight c7 that ultimately doesn't lead to much. It seems that if white takes here, if white plays rook f4, that was my line here, rook f4, then white has a better position. Taking and rook f4 is also interesting, but something like that is what what I was looking at. Now here f7 is under big pressure, and also b7 is still under fire by the bishop on d5. Here, Giri would have had a hard time to get a draw at the end. Not easy at all. Not easy at all to play. Instead, Topalov played knight to c7, rook d8. Of course, it's no fork. Black has rook d8 with a tempo. Queen f4, and now g5. Yeah, white keeps the queens on. Something like queen e5, rook e5 is ultimately not so dangerous. After g5, keeping the queens on makes an awful lot of sense. In general, this was completely okay played here by both players. The critical moment comes a little bit later. h6 covering g5. Oh, this is fine. Bishop f3. Yeah, and now Giri plays a strong move. He plays knight to e4. And this is a strong move because of two reasons. It's the only move in some way. And it also, comes with a pretty nice trap. Topalov is down to about 2 minutes, no increment, and now has to decide what to do. The thing is, it is very obvious to probably about, all players, let's say, if white is just taking this, rook takes, and then some normal move. I mean, maybe even taking on a7. You can just do here, and this is never going to be bad for white. Yeah, you can, no, not this one, but maybe rook a1 you can do. Yeah, queen f5 or something. It's just going to be a draw. Nothing will happen here. And Topalov certainly saw that, of course. He's a great player. But the thing is, there is also a different possibility, and this is knight takes a7, queen takes a7. And first you think, oh wait, isn't that good for white? Yeah, the rook doesn't have many squares to go, and it has to cover the e4 knight. So what is black supposed to do? Something like this? Probably not. Let's rook d1. The thing is, black has a move, and it is this move, knight takes f2. At first it's not clear why this should work at all, because bishop e2, check. Yeah, and now we come to the point. If white is now, he played king f1 of course, but if he goes here, yeah, then black takes and now has the move rook d2, and there's queen h5 mate, and white, funny enough, has no way to defend against the mating attack. Absolutely no way. If white is going back here,
checkmate.
It's an even quicker end. So white has to play king f1. It's the absolutely only move. And here, well, black is a rook down, right? Yeah, he is a rook down, but he has this great move, queen d5, and this is threatening mate in two moves. And the amazing thing is that white is just entirely lost here. It is just a complete loss. White cannot defend against this attack. Very sudden turn of events in some way, and very nicely planned ahead by Giri. I think it's pretty easy to see that, like here, yeah, you have a threat, okay, yeah, but it is not easy to calculate, especially with that limited time available, that white has no defense here. Yeah, Topalov, what did he try? He played bishop h5, but let's say he would go to e1. That is looking like a pretty logical try at a defense. Yeah, black checks. And then back. And now the threat is queen takes a g3 check. White has no moves. Yeah, let's say bishop e2.
Check.
And rook d6. It all works perfectly. No defense whatsoever. Yeah, rook c3.
Check.
Check.
Check. Check. Check.
And picks up the rook. It's really remarkable. White has no defense here. He's a rook up, and it doesn't look so terribly uncoordinated, but it is simply not holding. Not at all. Yeah, this is what Topalov tried. Bishop h5, looking at the f7 pawn. He only had 1 minute left.
Check.
It didn't matter. It was lost already, but
check.
Queen g2 check.
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 Yeah, and now
check.
White's king is hunted down for checkmate. Here Topalov resigned. I guess he resigned, yeah, he didn't lose on time. And it's mate now, yeah, the king has to go here.
Check.
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 Check. And here White can only delay
checkmate
the mate for one more move. So we have one decisive game in that first round, with Giri winning with black against Topalov. A game that probably would have ended in a draw. Oops,
Check.
sorry. Would have ended in a draw if not for the time trouble here. Knight e4 was a very nice move by Giri. I mean, it is a move that entails no risk at all, because, well, white takes, it's a draw. Okay, but queen a7 is an extremely tempting move, and it's not easy to spot why this shouldn't work. I mean, okay, you can say it's a matter of the time. Topalov had 2 minutes. Yeah, okay. Sometimes he has a problem of being a little bit too ambitious in his games or in some decisions, where he goes for a win when this is not warranted. But here, like 2 minutes, I don't know. He probably just miscalculated some particular line. Maybe he thought that something specific would work after queen d5 that did not work. It's hard to tell. But a good job here by Giri. He's the only yet undefeated player in the Grand Chess Tour and still has chances to win the overall event, the overall tour, I mean. And certainly nice for him to get a win in. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the coverage of round 1, and I'll be back with the round 2 coverage. Yeah, maybe even on the Saturday, but at least early Sunday European time. Thanks for watching.